Hello and welcome to episode 305 of the Crate and Crowbar PC Gaming Podcast, being broadcast to you from the 4th of December.
Yes.
Right, yes.
It is 4th of December.
We're not being broadcast to you on the 4th of December, which is what I was going to say, because you could listen to it at any time. We have no control over that. Welcome, Tom Senior, to this podcast. I'm Marsh Davis, by the way.
It's a rare twofer.
It is.
Every so often, almost everyone in the Great Crowbar is busy or ill, and it falls down to two heroic gents to pick up the slack and talk about video games for 1 to 2 hours.
We may have made the mistake of opening a bottle of whiskey, which is...
We'll see how that ends.
Yeah.
Yes.
We aren't going to drink it all, though, Tom. We're not going to drink it all. We're going to drink a sensible amount, a responsible amount.
Correct.
This being the season where people can overindulge in these sorts of pleasures.
It's very true, but we're too disciplined for that, aren't we?
We are, definitely. As you'll find out in an hour's time. Or more. News. There has been some sad PC gaming news, hasn't there?
It's sort of sad and happy in a way. I would say it's kind of like, it's a mixed bag. It's, Valley of the Gods is on hold. Campo Santo have been subsumed fully into the Valve matrix, and they've all found pleasure working on other projects within that.
Yeah, it is. I do feel weirdly ambivalent about it because, you know, I'm not going to dictate what they do with their lives.
Of course, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're making valuable contributions and feeling fulfilled in other ways. And, you know, if they just naturally drifted away from the project they've been working on, and, you know, that's fine. That's for their well-being. But at the same time,
I wanted to play that game.
Yeah.
It seemed really good. Like a really good idea for a game.
Yeah.
And
Maybe,
also,
maybe it turned out that it was hard to chaperone into something delightful and fun, but I would still like to see what the next Campo Santo game is. You know, what that team was going to do next.
How they evolved and worked together, and almost like the group dynamic that they had already established with their previous game. Like how that kind of grows and changes and informs their next game and the game after that. And that there's a real value to teams staying together and knowing each other and each other's talents, and then producing increasingly good things.
Yeah.
But it's always like, this is the promise of Valve, right? If you work for Valve, you've got a desk that has wheels on it, and you're supposed to be able to wheel it to any other project and indulge your, you know, whatever nerdy desires you have, like games in terms of games development. It's sort of they push it forward as a kind of, you know, paradise for game developers, but it's a paradise that doesn't publish many games or release many games at all. And we saw Clayton Hawking, for example. He was there for years and nothing happened, and now he's at Ubisoft and he's making games now, and they're actually going to release them. So that's a novelty.
You can't. Yeah, I mean, if Gabe Newell handed you a gun and said you can work on Half-Life, but you must kill somebody who you love, I mean, they've not got a chance, have they?
That's true. It's very true. You only get, I mean, this might be the last Half-Life game. This might be the last chance you get in the world to work on Half-Life. And that temptation is enormous, I imagine, for people who've grown up on those games and just loved Valve stuff. And perhaps been inspired to go into game development because of Valve's output. Yeah. The opportunity to work on Half-Life Alyx would be too strong to turn down.
Yeah. I don't feel the same pull towards Dota, to be frank, but you know.
Same here, but then Chris isn't here, so if Chris was here, maybe so. But I mean, Dota Underlords, like, that's a kind of fun game. I enjoy it as a kind of, I play it like Patience, like the card game Patience, just as a kind of thing that happens. I enjoy watching American football, and there's lots of downtime. So play some Dota Underlords between kind of plays. That's a nice way to play that game.
Right.
It's hard to take seriously as a game, but it's a nice thing. It's a nice toy. And I can see the appeal of working on that as well, because also the consequences are quite, like, low.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, Half-Life, the consequences are massive because it's such a huge name on the internet. Like,
the consequences of working on it, you mean? Or
consequences is not the right word. It's like, how hard can you fail on a given project?
Right, yeah. I mean, Half-Life is the most, I mean, that's why they didn't call it Half-Life 3, right? Because of that fear of failing.
Fear of failing on that particular brand name. Whereas those Underlords, it's,
you're banging out any old shit, can't you?
pretty much though, yeah. Cause it's distanced enough from the Dota brand, and it's obviously different enough in terms of format that you aren't responsible for Dota, which is where you get people yelling at Ice Frog and, you know, screaming at people who are working on the latest patch or whatever. You don't have to endure that. You can just enjoy developing this game and not have to worry about the horrendous outside world.
I do hope that the whole Valley of the Gods diaspora to other projects was mutual, because it would be awful if everybody just wheeled their desks away from you and you're the last person.
Oh God,
like,
yeah.
I don't know how to do UI.
I'm still designing sounds.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do hand animations.
It does. It is a shame though that game did sort of capture my imagination, because I've always really loved ancient Egypt and archaeology and photography games that sound really cool.
That sounded great. It sounded really good.
It did.
It's never going to happen, is it?
No, probably not.
That's quite sad, isn't it?
It feels like a game we can return to, said Jake.
Yeah.
Don't. Yeah, can.
Can, but
I have to say, did you read the statement?
I did, yes. It was very kind of mealy-mouthed and...
Did you think so? Because I thought it was a very admirable, piece of PR.
Okay.
In that, having written apologies of this kind before, it was incredibly unapologetic. And the last thing you want to do if you make a decision, which is, you know, for yourselves essentially, is to apologize to an audience, because that then gives them a sense that they should feel aggrieved.
They've been wronged.
Yeah. So it was really interestingly written in that it completely stripped out any kind of engagement with the disappointment people might feel. It wasn't about that. It was about, this is just how things have gone. And, that's great.
How it is.
Yeah.
And we're all happy now in the Valve paradise.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair play to them. But I would still like to play Valley of the Gods.
No ill will at all. But it's a shame. I think it does, demonstrate something that does happen at Valve, where talent goes in there and just vanishes into, compartments where you never quite understand what they're doing. So what the Camposanto people bring to those projects we'll never quite know. Yeah. And that's kind of sad, really, is that I wish that company, for all its flat structure, would but push forward its talent more and say, oh yeah, this person, like Viktor Antonov got this treatment on earlier Half-Life games, but hardly anyone ever does. And I wish that Valve would recognize its talent more in its final products and say, this person did this and this person did this. Yeah,
I wonder though. I don't think all developers always want that. You know, there is, I think with a Swedish company, I don't know if this is just the Swedish culture where people tend to be quite diffident and, not reluctant to take praise or reluctant to be in the spotlight, but, there's a sense, that people are quite happy being, a part of a greater whole.
You didn't want to be like celebrities or called out and stuff.
No, especially given, you know, Steam's platform would put people in front of a horrible audience.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, I mean, it's better just to be anonymous, isn't it? In those
it probably is, actually, to be honest. Yeah. I was thinking this about playing more Death Stranding and thinking about Kojima, and he sort of takes credit for everything, it seems. Like he's such a celebrity, basically. That's part of why he gets to have funding for the insane projects that he does. But I wonder if like part of that is being a shield for Kojima Productions' workforce as much as it is taking credit for their actions. And I was wondering, like, the landscape design in Death Stranding is absolutely extraordinary. It's beautiful, really gorgeous. And I don't know whether that was like procedurally generated and then adapted, or whether it was designed by someone like who actually built it. Like, and it's very, very hard to tell.
Wasn't it made by? I'm completely off piste here. Was it made by Avalanche?
Really? Oh, did they generate?
I had a feeling like that the landscape of the engine was something they had acquired from another studio, a non-Japanese studio, but I can't.
I mean, Avalanche would make sense given.
Yeah, I may have made that complete. I might have just been a cheese dream I had, a really, really uninteresting cheese dream about engines.
What if Avalanche made Death Stranding? Yeah. It's quite plausible though, given that they specialize in sort of semi-procedurally generated landscapes that are epic and look amazing.
Yeah.
I got a new television today. Ooh. It's a big fat television. It's like 4K HDR backlighting, and Death Stranding looks fucking amazing on it. It's so good. And it's ridiculous. Like, it's an incredible looking game. I kind of love it now.
As a result of the television.
It's helped it, yeah, absolutely, because anything that enhances those landscapes enhances the experience of struggling to conquer them. So it's one of those, I hate to be like the Grognardi, good PC graphics are really nice and make things better. But sometimes for some game experiences, they do, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What have you been playing?
I've been playing that Call of Duty.
Never heard of it. What is it?
It's some sort of shooting brown people simulator.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's not managed to quite get away from that legacy. It's actually the best Call of Duty in years. But having said that, it's quite a low bar to clear. But this one is actually at least sort of a bit self-aware about how awkward it is that you go to made up Afghanistan country.
What? Afghanistan?
It's just an invented sort of Middle Eastern country, and then you have to battle lots of Russians for some reason.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, Russians were very annoyed by this because the Russians are just gassing children in this game and bombing people indiscriminately. And the Russians are the bad guys again now, so that's allowed in modern Western pop culture. It's kind of fascinating to track Call of Duty's villains over the years because they correspond precisely to the politics of the current moment.
Nazis, Russia, Taliban,
yeah.
Russia again.
Russia's back, everybody. Russia's back. At this time, you get to fight with some freedom fighters, not terrorists this time. Yeah. And so you get multiple perspectives on the conflict. Are they freedom fighters fighting for freedom against the terrible Russians? Yes.
Okay.
Of course. Oh, don't get me wrong. The Russians are still absolutely the super bad guys here. They're the ones that you do a kind of defense mission and dozens of trucks will come up and Russians will run up a hill at you and you have a big sniper rifle and you just mow them down one after another. So it's still Call of Duty in that respect. It's still xenophobic. It's still xenophobic. It's still kind of cashing in on the villain of the moment in the American psyche and exploiting that for its dramatic points. However, some of the missions are very, very good. And also troublesome. So, the best missions it does are house raids, basically, where you're playing as special forces and you're going into a completely dark house and you've got night vision and, the geometry of the levels are completely one-to-one. They're not expanded. It's designed to feel claustrophobic. And, you go up and you have to clear rooms, basically. And it's slightly absurd. It's almost like kind of Time Cop, or it's almost like kind of like a laser gun shooter where you can bust into a room by pressing F, or you could sort of move very slowly forwards and then sort of check your corners and get someone. But then a terrorist will crawl out from under a bed and shoot at you. Oh no, the terrorist under the bed, kill him. Or there'll be a terrorist who's oh no, there's a woman holding a child. Oh, she's pulled a gun. Time to kill the woman. And, there's lots of screaming and very realistic execution of the soundscape of a house like this. And so there are people shouting upstairs that you can hear who are panicking because they're hearing the gunshots downstairs. And you're slowly going up and you could be shot at any moment. So you automatically try and shoot everyone that you see. But of course there are children in there and innocent people who are not armed. And the moment you shoot one of them, game over. You have to start again and do the house again. And this is a very odd interpretation of, it is the game's called Modern Warfare. It's a reboot of Modern Warfare. And that is Modern Warfare. It is special forces going into places they don't understand and trying their very, very best to kill the right people. And they often fail. So they've tried to interpret that in the format of a fun video game.
Yeah. The ideal way, really.
I suppose so. And while audiovisually it's incredibly successful and it's incredibly tense, you come out feeling mucky. You come out feeling icky, and maybe that's the result.
You get dirty, so the world stays clean.
I know, that's the terrible line in that justifies all of it.
What if everybody just stay clean?
Yeah, what if you didn't just go to the house and murder a load of women for no reason? So it's still trying to tread this line between, it still does the thing where when you die it shows a war quote, So it's still trying to be serious, but it's not a serious game. Like, even though the performances are good, a lot of the acting is very good, a lot of the kind of setup is very serious, and it feels like a really good war movie. But when you're actually doing the things, it still has that uncomfortable, mucky, grim aspect to it, which I think it thrives on. I think that's what it wants you to feel, but I don't necessarily enjoy it. But having said that, it's a good Call of Duty game. Based on its own terms, of what it wants to do. It succeeded, I think.
Would it be kind of less morally repugnant if the murdering was unproblematic or presented in an unproblematic way?
I don't know how they could present it unproblematically. Like, I don't...
Well, this is what I mean. Like,
right.
I mean, if they presented everybody as obvious bad guys who you are gunning down, then that also does a disservice to reality.
Yes, that's very true.
But then having this, these murky situations, I don't know.
I mean, this is why...
Maybe just don't make video games about that.
Yeah. This is why video games have used Nazis forever.
Yeah.
Because they're the unproblematic bad guys, basically. You shoot them and that's it, and it's fine, they're Nazis. Which is weird in and of itself if you interrogate it for more than a second. But it's the thing about being a bunch of white special forces dudes going into a random, like an invented Middle Eastern space and shooting up women and men in their own homes is just a grim thing to depict in a game, irrespective of the kind of the couching the way you couch it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how problematic they make that or how difficult they make it to discern villains from innocents, I mean, the context of it is still in a game and thus sort of de facto celebratory in some way.
Yeah.
It's still an endorsement, right?
It's still a power trip.
Yeah. I don't know that you can really get away from that without doing a lot of work around it.
I don't know how you do it. I think they're basically relying on the audience to not care about it.
Yeah, I'm sure nobody does.
Which is fine, I suppose. It's a good COD though, like, in terms of the way the guns feel, the way it reads, the way it looks way better. They've upgraded the engine. It's a much better looking game. Multiplayer still feels great. Sounds amazing. They've done everything that they need to do to make a good shooter, but the Modern Warfare label in particular still comes with a lot of caveats and a lot of problems, I think.
So it's not a recreation of Modern Warfare scene by scene then?
It's not at all, no.
Right.
It takes some of the ideas of the original Modern Warfare games and sort of adapts them in different ways. So instead of All Ghillied Up, which is a very famous stealth mission in Modern Warfare, which is very, very good, they'll do it where you're a child and you're there with your child brother, and that's their version of All Ghillied Up, where you follow your brother around and sort of put gas masks on and stab Russians
as a child
in the thigh as a child. Yeah.
Okay.
So it does that too. But they're basically, and there's an equivalent of the AC-30 mission. There's a version of that as well. So they sort of nod back to the original Modern Warfare missions.
So tell me more about this being a child thing. It's a bit of a non sequitur.
Yes. So
we have to be children so the world stays clean. Doesn't really work as a tagline.
It's a flashback for one of the main characters and how she became the freedom fighter that you meet at the start of the game.
Okay.
And I don't spoil anything necessarily, but you're thrust into a terrible situation where the Russians have gassed the town and the Russians are coming in with their machine guns and big muscles. And you, a tiny child, you have to crawl through grates and go from room to room, pick up screwdrivers and gradually stabbing a man in the leg until he falls over. At which point you eventually get...
How many different screwdrivers have you inserting into this?
I counted 4 during my playthrough.
That's a lot of screwdrivers to have lying around.
He also took it really well. Like, he was still walking around, he's still shouting, "Where are you?" And eventually you find a gun and, like, you're a child, so you can't handle it at all. So you just press the right trigger and it just rockets up to the ceiling, but you manage to kill the man. And then you take his gas mask and then you wander out into the streets and try and survive. And it's grim stuff.
Yeah, it sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible. Yeah, it's pretty horrible. It's bad. They warn you when you boot up the game, like, you're going to see all difficult scenes. You're going to see they do that every Call of Duty. It's like, but for what though? Like, to what end? Like, it doesn't really make me more invested in this character. It just feels like, again, a kind of another shock mission from Call of Duty, which they do every single time. And it's just more for the op-eds rather than in service of the story or in service of any kind of greater point. Still quite fun though.
Yeah. Do you enjoy COD multiplayer in general? Like, have you been a fan of that in the past?
Only in a purely casual sense. Like, it's something I'll do for 20 minutes. And I find it intensely frustrating for more than that, because it seems like purely opportunistic multiplayer where you're just running around and sort of shooting the first thing you see, which is fine to an extent. But I'm just so addicted to Destiny multiplayer, which is about like positioning and having the right guns and also being a good shot as well. And that just is a richer online experience for me than Call of Duty ever will be. But I can understand why, like, if you get home after the pub and you've got it on your PS4, boot it up, shoot some guys for an hour. I can understand like that is a casual kind of, measured type of multiplayer experience rather than something I'd want to invest in.
Is it Treyarch who made this?
No, this is Infinity Ward.
Oh.
Such as they are. I mean, most of Infinity Ward moved to Respawn. So I'm not sure who actually really Infinity Ward are these days. But they've made a good single player campaign. They've made a good COD, basically, like for a better one than I played for a long time.
Does it have, the zombies mode that was always a hallmark of the Treyarch?
It does not. That's Treyarch's trademark thing. Yeah, that they do. It's got some co-op missions and stuff that I've not tried yet. I'm looking forward to trying those because they used to be quite good, actually.
Yeah, I'm always impressed. I mean, I don't love Call of Duty, but they are value for money, right? I mean, you get a fucking ton of stuff with each game.
Absolutely.
Especially lots of different modes and, fully featured co-op missions on the side as well. It's an impressive, given that it's the kind of game that people will buy and they don't buy any other games that year because they're usually quite casually engaged with the gaming scene. I mean, it is really well designed for that purpose.
Yeah, it's spot on, isn't it? It's just a really good package and it's just the right price for what it is as well. Like, even if you don't get zombies and stuff, the fact that you get it's a really long single player campaign as well. It's like 10 to 12 missions, something like that. It's really, really good. And you get all that multiplayer as well and the co-op. It's as you say, it's a really good package. Yeah.
Would it be better if you could bang Captain Price?
I mean, that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
It's about time that quick time event was inserted to the Call of Duty universe. Captain Price looks really weird in this one though.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because I went to a Call of Duty preview event where the actors were there who played all the main, including Captain Price. And incredibly handsome, beautiful people, as you'd expect. But in the game, it's kind of like a weird podge face.
Oh, really?
His eyes are really strange. His voice is very good and gruff, and as you'd expect, and as it should be. But his face is really strange. It's really odd. It's like too young for his beard. And his eyes are just not old enough for his face. It's just a bit off. It's just a bit off.
There's something wrong about that.
There's something very wrong about that.
Didn't he play like a serial killer on Emmerdale or something?
All I want to say is that I don't want to bang the price that's in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I think they could do better. Got to do better next time.
Yeah.
What have you been playing, Marsh?
I've been playing a game called Still There, on the recommendation of John Walker, who's just set up, formerly of RPS, who's just set up a website dedicated to highlighting largely unknown games.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is a good service to provide. RPS already does a similar thing with Sin Vega's column on unknown games, unknown pleasures, which is fantastic. But this is John's own site dedicated to that. And he launched it today, and there's a whole bunch of reviews he's already put up. A lot of the games look really good.
Sweet.
So he's done a really good job of curating some interesting stuff, and a real mixture of stuff as well. Some indie-ish platformers, which I would there are too many of, generally speaking, but he's picked interesting ones, and there are some puzzle games, which are also sort of iPhone puzzle games, and some sort of narrative-led games. Still There is one of those. It's somewhere between a simulation game and a point-and-click It's point and click in that there is a sort of narrative that you have to progress through. So there are things that you need to point and click in order. But at your disposal, you're sort of seated in the middle of this space pod somewhere in deep space. And around you is your habitat, basically. You can kind of spin the camera around and everything you need to touch is just in front of you in 360 degrees. But there's lots of little things to play with. There's a fucking iguana there that you can feed.
Oh, nice.
Everything, and you can look at and it tells you about your character's perspective on it. And there's also incredibly complicated, dials and knobs and plugs and sockets.
Yes.
And all kinds of things that you really have to properly understand and rewire and engage with.
That's a lot.
And John's review, he said, I thought it was just a joke when I picked up the manual, and it's like this, 20-page thick manual with really dense instructions and diagrams on it. But no, you really have to.
You really have to understand that shit.
You have to understand it.
Oh shit.
And it's really good. It's a little bit intimidating when you have just this giant array of knobs and dials in front of you. But, they have been designed to fulfill a purpose, and there are instructions that help you understand them. And there's just something the whole thing is, painted really nicely, and it's all 2D. But there's a real kind of tactile sense to these little kind of whirring boxes and circuitry and big chunky screens with nice dials on them. And it feels really nice to just flip an on switch on and off.
Yeah. And
there's something very therapeutic about playing with those kinds of, devices. I don't know if you've seen this. I might have posted it in our Discord channel, but there's this really satisfying video. I think it's somebody booting up or testing the systems. It seems like it's on a train,
right?
But it's really, so this guy comes into this control room and he has to flip a whole bunch of switches, and he pulls, then he gets access to this key cabinet, and then he has to open this door with a kind of elaborate way. And then he goes through this thing where there's all these pipes and these, and levers, and he can only turn the levers after he's turned a key. And the key, once you turn the key, allows you to pull out a different key with a different color, and you put that colored key into the colored slot, and you turn that, and that allows you to pull out another key with a different color. And it's this ridiculous succession of it's just so incredibly video gamey, but just amazingly mesmerizing and therapeutic to watch.
Is this why all the trains are fucking late every day of the week?
Well, I hope First Great Western doesn't have the same procedure.
Nuclear deployment. Ridiculous.
Yeah. But, so aside from sort of fussing with all these switches and dials and, doing sort of maintenance routines and recycling your piss as coffee, that kind of thing.
Fantastic.
It's also a game which has a narrative in it, and your character has suffered a tremendous personal loss 20 years ago, and has basically buried himself in deep space to kind of,
right.
As a kind of act of self-annihilation, but also a refusal to move on from the point in which he suffered this tragedy. He just wants to sort of exist in this tragic space for the rest of time. But then spooky, weird things start happening to him, and I fucking love sad people in space. Is one of my favorite things. Like, I love 2001, and Solaris is my favorite movie of all time. It is fucking amazing. And this has exactly that sort of, it's slightly more comic than Solaris. There's lots of, wanking material strewn about your pod.
As there would be.
I think so, yeah. It's fairly kind of frank about it. But it has that same, supernatural / sci-fi vibe about, people coming to terms with themselves and what it means to be a flawed human, and memory and suffering, all these other things on the edge of, the cold vacuum of space.
Yeah.
That stuff's good shit.
That's an entire genre of thing, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
And a good one. Yeah. But what's the one where he goes into a black hole? Oh, it's like 4 hours long.
When it goes into a black hole, not the Nolan film.
No, Ad Astra. I've not seen.
Oh, I haven't seen that. No,
I've not seen it yet. Apparently, that's a sad dad in space one.
Oh yeah,
that's a good one to do. I can't remember the name. I'll remember it later in the podcast, I'm sure.
It's not Event Horizon.
It's not Event Horizon. That's a hilarious film. It's an extremely funny horror film.
Yeah.
I guess it has the same sort of staples as not Andrew Neil.
Yeah.
That guy. Anyway, this is why we don't talk about films.
Sam Neill.
Sam Neill, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Interviewing Joe Swinson with half his face ripped off.
Sam Neill is like a sort of... Does he have any personality? It's really hard to... I like him in Jurassic Park. But he basically doesn't ever have to be anyone in any of the films he's in. I remember he presented a series for the BBC about space, and it was absolutely terrible.
About space as a result of this?
No, it was a separate thing that he did, like, when his career appeared to have died.
Hell yeah.
And it was like early CG of planets spinning around him, and he very blankly said things about space into the camera with no wonder or sort of sense of excitement at all. And it was terrible.
He's very good on Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, he's sort of, spends most of his time on his vineyard in New Zealand, and
really nice.
likes cuddling pigs and ducks, basically.
Oh shit.
And it's just a nice man telling you about wine and pigs.
That is exactly the Twitter account I want to follow in 2019 and 2020 going forward. So that's lovely to know.
Yeah.
Sorry, a bit of distraction there.
No, I mean, that's, that would improve everybody's life, I think.
I think so as well.
But yeah, I don't quite know where the game's going yet. I haven't finished it, but it's intriguing and a pleasant experience so far.
Love a good button in a game.
Yeah, good buttons. I also finished Disco Elysium.
Ooh.
Which is great. And I really hope, other people on the podcast finish it soon so I can,
maybe we can do a
spoiler
spoiler cast.
But it's fantastic. And I feel like there's a few things about it that I would wish were different. But they only slightly diminish what is probably definitely my favorite game of this year and probably my favorite game of several years, I think. Like, towards the end of the game, you're yearning for some fast travel because you are running from one end of this, island chain to the other and back and forth, and you have to constantly click. You can't just, click once and have them go there. And I wish there was more reliable autosave, but only because, so here's something about the game. Like, I got really angry with it at one point, because I'd found myself in this encounter which I couldn't escape, and I had really high percentage chances on all of the dice rolls which happened in quick succession and failed every single one of them with completely disastrous consequences, like actually kind of nightmarish, oh my god, I don't know how this game's going to continue after this point kind of
my goodness.
terror. And I thought, well, I'm going to save scum this, obviously, aren't I? But then it hadn't saved for 45 minutes. And every other save in the game, because like you can scroll back through all your saves, every other save in the game that I've done manually has been preceded or what's the opposite of preceded? Followed, I guess, by an autosave within 2 or 3 minutes, making them almost functionally pointless. But for some reason,
45 minutes.
It didn't save for 45 minutes, and a whole bunch of really key stuff had happened.
Right.
So I don't know why I didn't save, but I don't know if I regret this now, but I went back to the earlier save 45 minutes ago and did it all again. And I think that was the wrong thing to do. Like,
own those decisions, Marsh.
I should have, well, the thing is, what annoyed me about it is they didn't feel like my decisions.
Right.
Because I'd done all the right things. I clicked all the right choices, and dice rolls just didn't go in my favor like 8 times in a row. And so naturally I'm really angry about that. Cause you don't like losing, but I shouldn't feel that way about this particular game. I think
it's a game about mistakes and being a shambles man.
You aren't that character. You are deciding things for them, but they have their own reality.
Yeah, right.
And I feel like it was legitimate of the game to say, no, you did all the right things and it still failed. And that's just the way things
are.
He's
a dipshit.
Well, no, I mean, no, it's just happenstance. Things go against you sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
And I've seen other people, we talked about it some time ago, or when we talked about Disco Elysium, on a previous podcast, where we talked about a video where somebody was really upset that, they were given these terrible racist, essentially, options or bigoted options. I can't remember exactly what was said.
Right.
And they couldn't back out of it. And one of the only non-committal options was like, wow, these options are terrible, aren't they? And then you click on that, you still have to say them. Because your character's failed a rhetoric check, right?
Right.
Because you failed other checks in the past that have pushed you to this point. And it's not on you. It's not your fault that your character has to say these terrible things. However, that's the way the fucking chips have fallen.
Yeah, right.
And you have to eat those fucking chips.
It's fascinating to be sort of carried along by a character that is supposed to be your avatar. Like, that's such a different dynamic for, it's
a
not really
role-playing game,
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's like, it's like a 50-50 split. It's you and this shambles bollock man who's an idiot. He's not an idiot, but like he's struggling. Let's say that. And there's a kind of push and pull between the player and the protagonist, which is absolutely fascinating and brilliantly written, I'd say. And gosh, it's going to get a lot of Game of the Year awards, I think.
Oh, deservedly. I really, though now I'm like, I wonder how any of that would have played out had I gone down Nightmare Road rather than what turned out to be probably the best possible ending. I feel I did really well. I did it. Yeah.
You won the game.
I didn't commit to, vile racism or communism or any of the, other terrible isms that you can, apply yourself to.
Yeah.
I did become a centrist, but I don't really feel that was, that was my fault either.
The game hates you for being a centrist as well, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but I mean, I feel like out of all of them, it's a little unfair to put all these different things at parity, because I think you can pick and choose between good elements of a lot of different ideologies, and that doesn't make you a centrist. That makes you, discerning.
Not a nice person, perhaps.
Yeah. But it is good, and it does. A lot of those kind of political choices at the beginning seem quite crude. Become kind of more significant in the overall theme and the story of the game. I do wish it was a little bit less digressionary. There's quite a lot of quests that don't really seem to have anything to do with your main investigation, and it's kind of passed off as being your character's detective style is that he's this freewheeling kind of almost Dirk Gently-ish holistic detective where everything is connected and he just stumbles through reality and then finds himself in the right place. But I found myself tapping my foot with some of that stuff because I was really engaged by the central mystery, and there are certain points where you want to push on with that. And also, I don't know if this is wholly true, but there seem to be a few bottlenecks in the game where you can't progress unless you do one thing, and that one thing is fucking nuts in at least 2 different cases.
Okay.
And it's just like, and I'd already got to the point in the game where I was ignoring dialogue choices. I don't want to say everything. It's not one of those kind of exhaust every option games because you're being a character. And so there were just some dialogue options that just seemed like dumb dialogue options that I wasn't going to pick. But then out of exasperation, I eventually did pick it, and it opened up an action which I would never have thought was possible as a result of that dialogue option. Gosh, and it feels a bit weird that the game trammels you in that way in certain points. Maybe there are alternative ways of approaching those bottlenecks, but I have no idea what they were. I felt like I'd spent a couple of hours just wandering around not knowing what to do, which is pretty annoying.
I wonder if that's a sort of a pragmatic, almost writing exercise. If you're trying to build this sort of game, you can widen it, but it has to come back to a crunch point until you can create that next sort of wide set of options again. Otherwise you end up in like Alpha Protocol territory where there are just so many different paths through the game that is almost unwritable. But that's still a kind of disappointment. Like, that stuff should be flagged better by the sounds of it than it is. I'm still on the sort of first couple of acts of it. So like learning the politics of the union and the big companies that kind of try and prey on the people in the town. It's an absolutely fascinating game.
Yeah. Cool.
So good.
Well, we'll do a Game of the Year podcast, probably.
Yes.
Maybe a Game of the Decade podcast. Do you want to pick a game for each year?
Yeah.
I think we should.
God, it's going to be a 5-hour podcast, but it's going to be good.
No, we don't have to talk about all of them.
We just have to say the name of the game and that's it.
Yeah, maybe for the 9 years, and then we can do this year's in
Sure.
depth. Maybe. It's never going to happen. That discipline is never going to be enforced.
Those Game of the Year podcasts go long anyway,
Yeah.
and I enjoy them very much. But if we introduce the decade, we'll all be skeletons by the end.
Yeah, or just incredibly drunk.
Yeah, both probably.
Almost certainly going to happen. Before we get to questions, Tom, I have
Yes.
a question for you.
Oh.
It's a Tom Clancy question.
Uh-oh.
Tom Clancy's questions.
From questions.
From questions. Have you seen the new Jack Ryan season of Jack Ryan?
I've only seen some trailers in which a man from the American Office jumps off a building while being pursued by another boring looking man.
Yeah, he is a strange choice for an action hero.
He's too soft-faced.
Well,
I'm used to him being a comedy actor, so now him being like sort of hardcore Jack Ryan, Tom Clancyville.
Well, to be honest, he could bring a bit more comedy to that role. Like, it's a super kind of deadpan, not deadpan, it's just flatlined kind of performance.
Dead-faced.
Yeah, there's
operative.
Occasionally there'll be a tiny bit of banter, but really it's just so one note serious. But, so, I have a weird pleasure about Tom Clancy paraphernalia, books and games and such.
You do go.
I think he's an interesting man. He,
yes.
Not to oversell his dramatic credentials, which, sometimes left things to be desired, but I do recall that, like, some of his early novels spooked people who were actually part of the military-industrial complex because they were seemingly so perspicacious about the operations of submarines and such that they thought he must have like an inside line.
He's understood the military.
He did understand the military, yeah, and I think a lot of, obviously there's a kind of lot of tub-thumping, jingoism that either comes from those novels or is layered onto them by the people who adapt them. Which is often unpalatable, I think. But it just reminded me you talking about COD, because this is just the new season of this came out.
Sure, yeah.
The last season was actually, I don't want to say it was good, but it was so much better than I thought it was going to be that it sounded, I kind of enjoyed the first season. I was like, that's actually not a totally stupid way of looking at this. There's some nuance there. It's humanized the kind of position of the enemies and ultimately, it does support, kind of without criticism, American hegemony. But,
sure.
At the same time, it still had a bit more kind of complexity to it than I think a lot of, Gerard Butler's stuff.
Yeah, sure.
It's still a bit more complex. But the second season isn't really, it's kind of garbage.
Oh no.
But but one thing just really amused me in it, which is that, the CIA go all over the world. It's a bit of a globe-trotting thing. There's quite a lot, it's all set in Venezuela apart from the parts that are set in London. There's exciting chase scenes and things. But at one point, Jack Ryan vaults over barricades at a train station. And I'm like, that just seems so ludicrous that anybody could get away with that now. Like he'd be tasered. I mean, the plainclothes policeman would have shot him by the
Brazilian man was shot for doing that.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And he wasn't armed, whereas Jack Ryan apparently somehow has
Super
guns
armed.
all over him. Yeah. All the time. Anyway, I don't know why I wanted to tell you about that, but
I enjoyed that. That was good. And does it make me want to watch it? Almost.
I wouldn't say you should. The first season, I would be interested as somebody sane who doesn't have my weird hard on for Tom Clancy watch the first season and tell me whether I'm mad in thinking it's better than it should be.
I will do the service for you, Marsh.
Thank you.
I will do this. Only because I enjoyed reading Tom Clancy novels when I was a teenager. And I also enjoyed reading the Hardy Boys as a teenager.
Yeah.
And you enjoy lots of stupid shit when you're a teenager. Yeah. And actually, the politics of it never percolated. Like, it never actually kind of went into my brain and like influenced my modern views. But it's a very comforting fantasy that, so I read Rainbow Six, which is fucking a massive book as well. Like it's like 900,000 pages or something. There's something comforting about there being the idea of the US as the problem solver, gets the job done.
Yeah.
No matter what. It's that comforting fantasy of like, the world isn't very complicated when Rainbow Six arrive. They shoot the people with guns described in incredible detail by a man who loves his guns. And that the bad guys are down and that's it. And it's kind of, I mean, I was about to say there's nothing wrong with that fantasy. There's plenty wrong with that fantasy. Plenty. But as taken purely, if you're 13 years old and you're reading it and it's just like some stupid action movie nonsense, it's kind of good fun.
Yeah. I think there are some interesting sort of, global what ifs that he poses that are then worked out with some, realpolitik involved. I don't know.
There's a bit of intrigue there.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame that the games have increasingly kind of veered into sci-fi because I don't think that's really where that material is designed to sit. And often the games are just very kind of uncomplicatedly, booyah! Yeah,
for sure. They've gone into Call of Duty territory.
Yeah.
Whereas they could have been a bit more complex. And in fact, I've been meaning to write something recently about like how much I miss the co-op Rainbow Six games. Rainbow Six Vegas, stuff like that.
Siege is amazing, actually.
Siege is amazing. It's a fantastic game. And it's an example of a game that is, it's very 2019 in that it's a service game and it keeps on evolving, but it's an excellent sandbox. A really cool sandbox. But I do miss the co-op Rainbow Six games, like Vegas. The ability to be on split screen or be on different consoles and be like, well, one person puts the kind of cool camera gadget under the door, counts the terrorists, marks them for you. You both burst in, take them all down. That is an excellent video game fantasy that has gone by the wayside, I think. And that's sort of, that's well.
Yeah. I hope there is another Splinter Cell being made.
Same.
But I hope it's, I'd love another bit of co-op Splinter Cell action.
Splinter Cell's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent game.
Talking of excellent games, do you have any other excellent games you want to talk about before we move on to questions from questions?
That's a
Tom Clancy's questions from questions.
Question. Are there any shooters you've enjoyed this year? Particularly? I feel like that genre has gone quiet.
No.
For me. Like, RPGs are doing very well. We've got Disco Elysium. We've got loads of kind of great stuff. But I feel like shooters are kind of like the RTS, they're kind of dying off almost. We've got the Halo series coming back to PC.
Yeah, that got released today, didn't it? Actually,
yes.
Halo Reach.
Yes.
I was tempted to install that, but I wasn't sure whether I'd be forced to install some sort of
Guffle.
Yeah, games for Windows bullshit.
Yeah.
So, just out of fear of that, I haven't installed it.
You might just need the Xbox app. As absurd as that seems.
Yeah, that's also maybe a step too far for me. I've been burnt by these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh god, yeah. I remember getting Dawn of War 2 and Games Windows Live absolutely destroyed my ability to play with other people on that platform.
Yeah.
Absurd, stupid piece of software.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have. Also, I haven't been drawn to play them, I think is the significant change. It's too grim. I mean, it's too grim, really. Oh, if it's not grim, then I feel it should be grimmer. And, it's exactly what we were talking about earlier. They're sort of stuck between these difficult decisions where making something sanitized and happy is actually a disservice to reality, but then making something grim is also sort of basically a pornographic enticement to violence. I don't know what they can do, but I just don't want a part of it often now.
Yeah.
And I can't, and things that exist in a sort of semi-fantasy space like zombie things, I'm not into, because I don't want to play something which is inordinately stressful. Like Chris was talking about, the Hunt Showdown, and, Jim Rossnell, a friend of mine, works for Big Robot, is a big advocate of that game and has been enticing us to play it.
But it's a great game.
I don't really want to spend, 20 minutes with that much adrenaline in me, feeling bad.
Yeah.
You know, I want nice things now in my life.
Is it because we're now well past 30 that these things have faded as, you know, experiences that we desire? Frankly, we want to be relaxed and restful. And having said that, I do love Hunt Showdown. It's great. I'd love to play it with Chris and Jim, actually. That'd be awesome. Incredible sound design in that game, by the way. If you've got a good pair of kind of like surround sound headphones, like, it really places sound very precisely in the environment all the time. And they're all those sound cues are tactical. They all matter to your game, because if you get close to some pigeons and they fly off, it's probably not pigeons, it's probably ravens or some shit. That's going to alert people. But if you hear some sort of vomiting, it's going to be a weird type of zombie that you want to avoid. So it all matters. It all matters. But it also creates rich, horrifying soundscape that you're trying to work through all the time. But yes, I understand completely that desire to just not be stressed out by entertainment anymore. And I've felt this from horror games.
Yeah.
So I was playing a game called Aspilov, which was...
How do you spell that?
ASPULOV colon something, but that word will get you there, on Steam. And it's about the Norse gods, but in a kind of futuristic context. And it's a fascinating idea for a game where the Norse gods are dying and the world tree is kind of like, you see the roots protruding into this futuristic facility that you're sneaking through. And the idea that like Loki might be hunting you or Thor might be hunting you. They're not the kind of jolly Marvel superheroes that you know. They are actually kind of Lovecraftian nightmare beings.
Oh.
And it's a super cool idea, but I just couldn't stomach it because, I couldn't, the first time you encounter an enemy, they've got like weird stag heads and they sort of like stab you in the neck a load. And I was like, I actually sort of like viscerally almost felt it myself. And I was like, oh, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this type of game anymore. And something has changed in me that means that I can't let that stuff go. Like, it's very strange.
Do you think it's aging, or do you think it is the world?
Good question. I feel like it's aging. I feel like it's a kind of empathy, unstoppable empathy.
Right.
That means that if I'm being stabbed in the neck in first person, I can't not feel that in some way.
Right.
And that is something that's changed in me in the last sort of 5 years. And that's not on the game, it's on me. Like that's my thing.
Is your body preparing you for children, Tom? Is that what it is?
It absolutely is. So I actually, that's a really good point. I've become super broody in the last couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of part of a kind of biological process that's happening.
Oh, wow.
Part of a kind of brain chemistry thing that's happening as well. Where suddenly you become averse to violence.
Preparing yourself for obsolescence so your nutrients can feed the next generation.
Exactly right. And
lie down and be digested by your young Tom.
It's all I want. It was a horror prospect, but now it's a real prospect. No, that's a real thing. Yeah, for sure.
Shall we do some questions?
Let's do some questions.
This isn't a question. There's no question element to it. However, it is largely about birds. So, perfect for this podcast. Sam writes, hello, Crate and Crowcores. There is a very good LARP about crow funerals by Tim Hutchins, called appropriately A Crow Funeral. It's very on point with the description you floated, such that I doubt I'll be the only one contacting you about it. Well, I'm afraid you were. You have that special knowledge. It has one of the best rules for managing in-game communication I've ever seen. All the players stick hands on one atop another, after which the hey rule is in play. If a crow ever speaks while another's hand is on top of the stack, or two crows attempt to speak over each other, or there is instability in the hand stack, or a crow begins speaking with an uncrow-like understanding of the environment, all the crows should begin shouting, "Hey, hey, hey," until the situation is rectified. If one crow hears another crow saying, "Hey," they should take up the cry and repeat it until the problem is identified and solved. Think about the scolding and arguing of crows. This is what you're doing. Best, Sam. P.S. An alternative title for this game offered in the context is Cause of Death Unknown. Cause spelled C-A-W-S.
Caw.
Yes, which made me shudder with dark delight when I read it, and just as much now when I type it. So there you go. You got any feelings about crow-based role-playing systems?
No, I've listened to your bird chat with great interest on recent podcasts. And my equivalent is squirrels that I watch every day outside of the VAL window. And
they're not hibernated yet.
No, they're still out there. They're doing extremely dangerous things. So we're on like a big Bath hill, and out the back of our flat, we get an absolutely steep, massive view of a load of trees. And squirrels must have the lightest kind of bone structure. Like, they must be so light, because I've seen them climb up twigs and then leap onto a tree and just go right to the very top of a tree and go out and dangle on the very edge of the narrowest branch. And I was like, you're gonna die. You're gonna die if you fall off here. You're gonna die.
I don't know, what is the terminal velocity of a squirrel? Maybe they can just
they might be like spiders, right?
Yeah.
Where spiders just, they can fall, but they're like so light that it doesn't matter. But these squirrels, gosh, I watch them clambering all over, and sometimes like two of them will come up and they'll meet at the top of the tree and they'll sort of like tap each other's noses and then go off in different directions. And it's extraordinary. I love to watch it. Nothing about crows though. Don't know about those crows.
Oh, I'm into squirrels too. They're good. Liquid fur. What they are.
Yeah, that's right.
Bouncing through
That's right.
the grass. Good animals. Although they're not allowed my birdseed. The birdseed is purely for the birds.
Correct. What do you do if you see a squirrel attacking your bird feed?
The bird feeder is attached to a window, so it's very difficult for the squirrel to get to.
I gotcha.
But given the speed with which my fat balls are being devoured, I suspect there may be some sort of intervention from a larger animal than a sparrow, since they do go overnight sometimes.
Some sort of fox.
Well, no, it's like above the height at which any animal could reach it from either below or above.
Huh.
But maybe another kind of big bird is just swooping in. Maybe the seagull just comes in and eats the entire thing.
American eagle.
Yes.
Far from home.
Yeah. Fat balls though. Sparrows love them. Nico writes very long email, largely about Jason Rohr. Dearest crawdads and crumb cakes. Sorry, crawdads in crumb cakes. I don't know what a crawdad is. Do you know what a crawdad? Are you a crawdad?
I think that's a previous episode reference, but I'm not sure why.
I've recently watched a GDC talk from 2018 titled 2014 versus 2018, The Shape of Financial Success Before and After the Indie Apocalypse by Jason Rohr, the developer of the Castle Doctrine and 1 Hour, 1 Life. Rohr, I don't actually know how to say his name. Is it Rohr? Rohr?
I like when you said Rohr.
Rohr makes the claim that indie game sales success has shifted from large day one numbers to long tail player retention and growth. He makes this case by comparing the Steam Spy numbers and his own experience with his own titles, showing that 1. Games featuring unique situation generators sell more than more fixed experiences, and that 2. The majority of revenue from successful indie games is coming later and later after launch. His theory is that even though the gaming press may give some boost to indie sales numbers, the greatest conversion rate now comes from word of mouth. Indie games like Spelunky or Slay the Spire or Dead Cells generate unique challenges that keep players coming back. And the longer a game is played for, in the play span sense of an hour a week for a year instead of the play time sense of 52 hours on one Eldritch Sunday, the greater a chance it has to stay at the forefront of the mind. And the easier it becomes to recommend or speak lots about on the PC gaming podcast you're featured on. Since word of mouth takes time to gain momentum, roar saw sales peaking not on or shortly after launch, but instead several weeks or months later. The format of recommendations for particularly successful titles changes from have you played game to do you play game. He specifically calls out exceptional games like Tacoma, it is an exceptional game, or Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, which is a game, which received ample press attention, but failed to achieve corresponding sales and cites these market shifts as an explanation. There's 2 more paragraphs, Tom.
Let's do it.
How would you evaluate the case Roa makes? What do you think about how this might apply to AAA games with the hook, habit, hobby / games as a service / lifestyle game model appearing to be more financially successful? This is a very difficult question to read out on air because it requires sort of parsing in a written context. But anyway, what games fit / break this mold? Early access? It's a shame Tom isn't here. May he RIP in peace. Because Gunpoint and Heat Signature not only straddle the era in which Roa claims the shift largely took place, but also follow Roa's model of what successful indie games generally look like in each corresponding time. Okie dokie do, darlings. Nico. Incidentally, I should say, I don't mind the length of the question. I'm just impressed that I managed to read it all out coherently.
You did so well, Marsh.
Yeah. Many interesting things there.
Yeah, that's a lot of points to account for.
Yeah.
The first thing I'd say actually is that, as a member of the gaming press, we don't expect to shift the needle on game sales ever. That's not our job.
Yeah.
That's not what we're here for, and we don't give a shit if a game sells more, if we give it a good review or a bad review.
Right.
We're literally just there to give that buyer's advice. And so many people get this wrong, like online, on the internet, the bad internet, where they think like, oh, if you've not sold games, you're not a good critic. That's not the purpose of a critic. Yeah, and that's tremendously frustrating take to see online.
You're just part of the marketing machine, Tom. Face it.
Look, we all are, absolutely. But it's possible to be part of the marketing machine, not give a shit about the marketing machine, and say what you actually think.
Yeah.
And that's how you do your job.
Yeah, it's interesting. There has been a shift, right, in the way that game coverage works, where there has been a concerted effort to talk about games over the course of their lifespan rather than just a launch. Because I think there was a period where there was a difficult moment in the games industry where we were talking about games at launch and actually we were missing stuff that had become lifestyle games in the background. Like League of Legends basically wasn't ever talked about in the games press. And then suddenly it had, millions and millions of players. And we're like, oh, and this is something we should have been covering.
Yeah, we should have been watching this, right? And also Minecraft and things like that.
Sure.
As the question says, lifestyle games are a current present thing that, but they're very difficult to cover, actually. You need people in the community to come to you, and you need to commission people in the community to do that, which what we're trying to do on Gamer. But it's difficult because it's still a niche interest.
Yeah.
Even though it might be a massive audience, it's a niche interest, and you need an expert to cover it who actually really truly knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's hard.
And that's hard. That's what's difficult about it. Because on PC Gamer or on any games media brand, everyone's a generalist. You have to be able to sort of have some understanding of almost every genre, and not just that, the craft of actually making a magazine or a website.
Right.
All of that needs to be in place in the stuff you have. And what you have to do is reach out to the experts in individual communities to actually cover these very, very, very intense games. And that's the hardest part of the job, frankly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. So there's a couple of things about, Jason Rowe's assertions in terms of how the indie apocalypse had played out. I would hesitate to use his own games as a good example of, how the industry as a whole has changed. I think he's generally correct in the way he perceives it, but I don't think his games are a good illustration of that, simply because, although they're very interesting, they are incredibly idiosyncratic games and not likely to engage with a large audience.
But I feel as though they've been well covered as well.
Yeah, they have. Oh, well, earlier games more so, I think. I think he's sort of fallen out of I mean, there was a period where
the indie darling.
Yeah, who are we going to call from the indie community for this feature? Oh,
Yeah.
Jason Rose on the other end of this email address. And now I don't feel like those kind of articles are being written anymore because the indie space is just vast. So I don't think he has the same visibility and platform that he used to for any of his more recent games. But in terms of games moving from single player experiences to things with longer term engagement, I think that's definitely true. I think one of the reasons that roguelike, but I think there's a bit of chicken and egg there in that I don't think that for example, the popularity of roguelike games is simply a reflection of market trends which fixate upon games which are around longer. I don't think that's necessarily just it. I think also it's just a different way of developing games, basically, and I think it's one that is more approachable to people with fewer resources at their disposal.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I've enjoyed the fact that AAA developers with enormous resources have been making very standard single-player games this holiday season. So, Outer Worlds and the Star Wars game.
7 out of 10, both.
Yeah, I give it a 75 for PC Gamer. They are absolutely bog standard. Bog standard sounds terrible, but you know what I mean. Right?
Yeah.
They are just quality holiday games that are single player, no kind of like tail.
Yeah. I'm really glad that the AAA industry is still making that stuff.
Yeah, I'm very glad about that as well. But you're absolutely right that if I was like a small indie developer with 10 people or fewer, absolutely be trying to get that, Dead Cells sort of, rhythm of updates and constant changes to enemy types.
It's not, but the thing is, it's also not just about the updates after launch, although that is where your sales come from, is being in the headlines for a long period of time. Though changes to the Steam marketplace may mitigate that as a problem. But it's also about, being in the news long enough. If you do like an early access thing and you're constantly evolving, then you have a kind of lively community that's still engaged across the course of your early access.
Sure.
There are lots of advantages to having something that evolves and changes basically over a period of time, not just after development, but during development, especially if you're doing some sort of crowdfunding or you're just trying to, get, clout, for want of a better word, on social media. Not actually obviously via clout, because I know nobody who uses that, but just being able to constantly reinvent yourself and not necessarily produce headlines, but produce, some sort of ineffable buzz about your game through screenshots or updates is essential to just remaining top of mind. And I don't think that's necessarily a change about the way that games are sold, but it's definitely about a change about the way that they are marketed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. And the games press has never been less relevant.
Yeah.
I would say. And I'm very comfortable with that. I think that's cool.
I think it's more of a recalibration from, the idea that the games press is some sort of monolithic force that approves or disapproves of things to being fucking critics.
Yeah. Exactly.
And which is what they always were.
Always were.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that kind of, the sort of, the absence of the paranoia about people being paid off or, blah, 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 et cetera, that will go away if, the media just sort of like settles down and isn't this sort of machine that people think it is.
Do you feel like there's less pressure for consensus now amongst the game press than there was?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's obviously a good thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When I review things, there was a point during Gamergate where I loved reviewing for Edge because I didn't have my name on it.
Right.
And that was actually, so I got to review Civilization and say what I really, really thought about it and not have my name on it. And that was great because you don't get the death threats and the kickback. And that's a real thing in this industry. Like, we don't talk about Gamergate very much, but it was absolutely awful for people working in the industry. Like, it really, really was. And, I'm lucky talking as like a white bearded dude.
Yeah, I'm sure we would have got it much worse had we been any other colour or gender.
Absolutely. And people did get it worse.
Yeah.
And it was fucking awful. And so uncalled for. Like, so wrong. It's so stupid. But I think now things have settled down a bit. The critical community is able to call out. So I think Death Stranding, for example, is a really good example where some reviewers found it slightly repulsive and some reviewers found it to be transcendental. And all those reviewers were able to express themselves and express that opinion.
Right.
I think that is a good sign for the health of the critical community around games. I think that's come back this year. And a couple of years ago, might not have been able to say the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people would have been much more openly attacked for their positions on games, whereas I don't think people really give a shit as much now if somebody expresses a different opinion to their own, or maybe those people who would normally give a shit just aren't engaged with that.
They've gone somewhere else.
Yeah. They're to their own little fucking cesspit.
That's right.
Of anger. Yeah. But whether this trend of service games will continue is interesting, because with subscription services like Apple and with new storefronts which are funding games completely upfront like Epic, it's much less need for you to create something which is successful over the long run if you're being paid up front.
That's a good point.
But I don't know how long that patronage will last. I think that this is just a brief blip.
Yes.
And in fact, once Epic has established itself, probably there will be less tasty inducements for games to be exclusive to it. And I suspect that Apple's subscription service will start offering far less attractive deals to its potential developers. I don't feel particularly optimistic about how subscription services will affect development. I feel like it will potentially starve developers who exist outside of that ecosystem. And then once that ecosystem is locked in, there's no real incentive for it to continue to provide good value to its customers either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like it's a weird spasm, and I don't know what the kind of the repercussions will be for it. I think there will be some reaction to it in some other part of the market where some alternative will arise. But I don't know what that is yet.
We're moving into an era of subscription services.
It's terrible though, isn't it?
Yeah. Because like, as soon as that subscription ends, you don't have access to any of that entertainment that you paid for.
Yeah.
But I think it's almost a sign of people moving television models into games and desperately trying to impose the Netflix model onto a gaming subscription, basically.
Do you think it works though? I don't know. I mean, it's offering good value, but like, I just don't think that is sustainable good value either for the people who make content for it or for the people who imbibe it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean like Netflix as a kind of video proposition. I would much rather pay £5 to own a film that I want to watch.
Right.
Than pay £10 a month to watch a lot of dross.
Yeah.
But with some occasional good things.
But you have the opportunity to do this to some extent, right?
Not with Netflix, I don't think. So
No, I mean, you can't pick their products and buy them, but I mean, you can, for example, buy or rent films from Amazon, which would be shown on Netflix.
And I do often, yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay, see, because I don't do that. I do use Netflix and just sit there scrolling through lots and lots of stuff I don't want to watch, and then eventually give up and do something else.
But that's the thing, like, Netflix has good stuff. I love The Crown. The Crown is a great series. Yeah. And that's really worth watching. But most of their stuff is not like that. But I'm very happy to go onto Amazon Prime and pay £7 to own a film that I know I will watch over and over again.
Right. And
I'm not sure that, I don't think I'm a very common I don't think many people buy media that way these days. I think, we're living in a fascinating time where when I was 12, the first piece of music I bought on cassette. And what an extraordinary journey media has taken.
What was the first cassette you bought?
Oh, it was, If You Tolerate This, Your Children Will Be Next by the Manic Street Preachers.
That's a legit
It's
kind
a
of
fucking great track.
lasting choice. Mine was Simpsons Sing the Blues, which I think is obviously just as a lasting piece of entertainment.
Look, before that, I was given PJ and Duncan. So I can't claim any sort of artistic superiority in this contest.
There's some very good blues tracks that are.
They had Let's Get Ready to Rumble, and that's all I needed when I was preteen. But the idea that like we've come from that to where we are now is astonishing to me. I think about it a lot. Like just the sheer progress of technology is really exciting. It's really great. But also terrifying.
Yeah, it's mad.
Bad.
Access anything at any time pretty much is, I'm always so ungrateful for it.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sitting on a plane, you're like, I can't connect to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, right.
Like,
yeah.
wow.
30,000 feet above the fucking earth. Yeah.
Yeah. Did that answer the question?
I don't know. Care. Sorry. What was the question? It's too late.
Yeah, it's gone now.
It's too late. Sorry.
We do have other questions, but they specifically require answers from other people of this podcast, really.
It's true.
People with children, primarily. So yeah, we can't answer them. It's a 2-man podcast, so, it can't go on forever.
We don't have so many takes.
Yes, if you'd like to send us more questions, you can do so at questions@creatingcrowbar.com. You can tweet us at creatingcrowbar. You can watch this, if you wish, on YouTube, which is youtube.com/creatingcrowbar. You can join our Discord community, the link for which is found on our website, creatingcrowbar.com. Individually, you can contact us should you wish, though probably don't, via Twitter. I'm at Marsh Davies on Twitter. You are?
I am at PCG Ludo, Ludo.
Thanks for being here, Tom. A special evening. Man. We didn't drink all the whiskey.
We drank half of it.
Oh shit. Yeah, maybe even 2/3.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, God damn it.
Enough.
Thanks for listening, everybody.